Now, let's ask ourselves, why are we all here? Look, a room full of people from young, old, all sorts. I mean, from across the entire community spectrum. Why are we all here? I think we're all here because we know on a fundamental level in our hearts that we have a right to peace and abundance, and we aren't getting this. It's like there's a big stink in the room. Everyone can smell it. Everyone's going, oh my God, who cut that one? And there's a group of lawyers in the corner with nose plugs on saying, smells like roses to me. We know there's a big stink in the room. We know that they use words they will claim are our laws that have the force of law over us, and yet at the same time they will claim that we cannot possibly understand these words because we are not a lawyer. Language is important to us. It expresses that you might use the exact same language as someone else, but if you don't understand, if you're operating upon a presumption or an assumption, you are not going to get what you want. And we shouldn't have to dig through the shit they manufacture in order to find the diamonds of our freedom. A free man on the land, in case you don't know what it is, a free man on the land is a human being in a common law jurisdiction who has revoked consent to be represented and thus governed, and therefore is not subject to any statutory obligations, restraints, bylaws, orders, anything like that. Now, why is it that they get to apply these words against you, but they don't apply them against me? What have I done that has allowed this situation to develop? It's very simple. You're all sinners. Yeah, not that I'm a saint, because I'm not, but you are all sinners. You have a social insurance number. Do you know what that means? They have ruled, they identify it. When you go in there, they call that social insurance number an employee identification number. The courts have ruled payment into a pension plan is prima facie evidence of employee status. Only employees pay into a pension plan. The fact is, your social insurance number means you are all government agents. When I hear you complaining about the government, I don't hear citizens complaining about their lawful government. I hear employees bitching about their employer. And that's why all of these acts, all of these statutes have the force of law over you, because you are a government agent. These rules were never ever meant so that governments could control us. These are the rules that are in place so that we can control our government. These rules were never ever meant so that governments could control us. These are the rules that are in place so that we can control our government. Who can give these words the force of law over you? Only you. Everything that you complain about the government is all a result of your voluntary actions. No one forced you to take a sin. You went and you begged for it. You applied, you submitted an application for your sin. You know what they can't do? They can't stop you from abandoning that number. No one can force you to be their employee for the rest of your life. You can abandon that number at any time, and the moment you do, you are no longer within that box. All of their power that they have over you is a result of two things: their deception, your ignorance. Sorry to be rude, but their deception doesn't work without your ignorance. And the way to deal with it is to deal with your ignorance. Then when their deception comes, you can look at them and smile. I got a question for you. Who here has a driver's license? Unfortunately. Okay, now who here, keep your hands in the air. Okay, put your hands down if you put your hand up higher. I see you cheating. Higher. Put your hands down if you actually read the Motor Vehicle Act before applying for your license. How do you know you have any obligation under that act to have a license if you've never even read it? You pay income tax. Who here has ever read the Income Tax Act before paying their income tax? It's 2,566 pages long. Did you read it? No. There's a maxim in law, a Roman maxim that says, let he who would be deceived be deceived. If you aren't even willing, if someone comes up to you and says, you have to do this, why? Oh, how do you know that? Everybody knows it. Oh, really? Nobody read the act, but everybody knows it. Whatever understanding you have now is enough for you to act upon. If you recognize this is too confusing and I don't understand it, that could be your notice of understanding. Here's what I understand. I don't understand any of your words. That's good enough. Believe it or not, all of these statutes, all of these rules are the rules for the Law Society, and you can prove it. Only they can make the statutes, the regulations, or the orders. You are not allowed to pen these. If you go into court, they claim that only they may use these documents or these words. Only they can claim complete understanding of these words. Unless you're a member of that society, you cannot understand these words. Why? Because societies have a number of powers. As a society, you can generate and create your own rules, and no one who is not a member of that society is going to have a say in creating those rules. You can claim that no one but a member of that society can understand those rules because you can actually create your own language as a society if you want. And you can do this by taking an existing language, let's call it English, and you can change just a few words, not tell anyone else how those words have been changed, and guess what? You've got an entirely new language that appears to be English, but it's not, and only they know it. And this is the magnificency of the deception. This is why it's so beautiful. When this whole thing unfolds, they think they're going to be fooling God? They think that they're going to lock us up in their cage? No. All they are doing is creating a set of rules that is going to be applicable only to them. We step out of the cage, and all of these deceivers, all of the judges, all of the ignorant cops who refuse to look into the meaning of these words, they're the one bound by these rules, not us. You ask them, under what authority are you acting? If they try saying, I'm a cop, so what? Under what authority are you acting? If they try saying it's against the law, and I've had them do that before, it's against the law. What law? The Controlled Drugs and Substance Act. That's an act and a statute, not a law. Are you aware gross negligence is equal to fraud? They hate that. These people have a duty to understand and to distinguish between statute and law. Statutes are not laws. They do not apply to you, they apply to your person. You are not a person. You have a person. It exists in association with you. They've been dealing with us for so long with people who are essentially ignorant that we don't even distinguish between statute and law, so they assume that you are going to be there. They'll say, you broke this statute, you broke a law, I want to give you a ticket. And then they'll say, I need to see your ID, and if you don't show me ID, I'm going to arrest you for obstruction of justice. I've had cops do this to me, SkyTrain cops. The fact is, though, until they see ID, they have absolutely no evidence of the existence of a person who is liable under the statute. So they're putting the cart before the horse. If they come up to you, and what they like to do, they use presumption and assumption so often, they won't even ask you a question. They come to the window, driver's license, registration, insurance, look at them and say, apples, bananas, and pears? You're not making any sense. Like, you used a complete sentence? What is it you want? Do you have a driver's license, registration, and insurance? Or may I see it, is usually what they would ask, because they're operating upon a presumption too. You ask them, are you willing to claim under full commercial liability that I have an obligation to have such a thing in order to exercise my common law rights? They're going to try to establish the evidence of a person. They want to see ID. They'll ask you, what's your last name? If you give a last name instead of a family name, they can assume that you are a person. One of the key things to a person, they need two things. They need a name and a date of birth. Without that date of birth, they have no claim that there's a person. Anytime a cop asks me, when were you born? Sorry, I wasn't counting then. Really wish I could help you. I've had cops say, okay, fair enough. When do you celebrate your birthday? I do that every day. Okay, good enough. If I wanted to send you a gift for your birthday, when should I do that? Tomorrow sounds good. You're late. You don't give them that information because you don't know that information. There is no way on earth you could possibly prove in a court of law that you know when you were born. Even anyone tells you, it's all hearsay. What they can establish was born was the legal fiction, that person. That you can point to, and you can point exactly when that was born. One of the things they're doing when you get in court, if they're acting upon your legal entity, upon your legal fiction, You come up and they are, if you answer for this name, they are assuming that you are acting as surety for the charged party, for the accused. That's why you're moving. That's why you're acting. Equality before the law is mandatory. I'm competent to administrate my own affairs. I do not consent to this transaction. He has no power after that. He can't do anything. He'll try to railroad you. He'll try to get you to appear to change your position and opinion. Stick to your position. Stick to your guns over and over. Tell them right off. Tell them, I am not surety for the accused, although our names are very familiar. Oh, really? What's your name? I'm not the accused and I'm not surety. That's all you need to know. I'm just here as a member of the public observing. The big one, ask them for their oath and their bond information. They're an officer of the court. If they're an officer, they're holding office. Offices have oaths. Ask them to put their oath on the record and their bond information. The bond information is who issued the bond, what's the value of that bond, and who is holding it in trust for redemption. The bond is a piece of paper. Essentially what they got to do is they have to act on their bond. They're standing on a piece of paper which is worth $1 million, and they can't step off that paper. They cannot operate outside of the realm of that bond. If they do, you get to say, hey, look, someone abandoned $1 million. Thank you very much. If you can distinguish between the City of Edmonton, which is actually properly called the Corporation of the City of Edmonton, and Edmonton City, you can distinguish between the legal entity, which is where all the bylaws are, because if you look up definition of bylaw, you know what it says? Rule of a corporation. So why are these corporations imposing these rules upon you if you let them know, I'm not even, oh yeah, I'm walking down the street in Vancouver City, but that doesn't mean I'm a person in the corporation of the City of Vancouver. If you distinguish between driving and traveling, a driver is someone who is engaging in commerce on the highway and is paying for it. They'll point to the driver's seat and a passenger seat. What if you're just traveling and your passenger is actually a guest? If you can distinguish between driver, guest, passenger, and owner, that's when you start finding your freedom there as well. I'm not a driver, I'm not engaging in commerce, and I'm not asking you for a license. If you distinguish between an enforcement officer and a peace officer's duty is to keep the peace. An enforcement officer's duty is to enforce either court orders or ensure statutory compliance. They are breaching, their primary role is the peace officer. And they are actually breaching their duty to the peace if they try to act as an enforcement officer without actually having evidence of person status. Hold them to that. Distinguish between those. If you can distinguish between de facto and de jure. De facto means, okay, we're there but we're fraudulent. We're fulfilling these duties just because no one else is. But it's actually fraudulent. De jure means it's done under law. It's a proper lawful court. Ask the courts. You know what they hate? Is this a de facto court? You're actually asking them, is this a fraudulent court? And it is a de facto court, and they have to answer it. On another question that they hate, whose courts are these? They'll try telling you, oh, these courts are yours. Really? Do I have full and complete access? Ownership is determined by access. An owner to property has full, unconditional access to their property. If you only have limited access to that property, you cannot claim to be an owner. You don't have full and complete access to any of these courts because you do not have a right to create the acts that are being used. You don't have the power to file documents, and you are barred from earning a gain or a fee or a reward from acting as an agent for anyone in court. Now, if this is the case, and there's another party that does have fuller access to the courts, who do they belong to? What if these courts are just private courts for the Law Society that you are making use of because they get you into their little deception? They've created a box for themselves, said this is the law for us, but we assume that it's the law for everyone. These are the rules of government agents. These are the rules that exist so that we can have a measure of control over the government. They've hooped us into getting a social insurance number, so now we're all part of the government. We're all bound by these rules, but we can step away at any time. And when we do, we're free of these rules. They're still bound by them.